Okay, so today's PowerPoint, we are going to talk about muscle fibers 101. It's going to be an introduction to muscle fibers. And the main reason I'm making this video is kind of a step one before I jump on to step two. So if I'm going to talk about energy systems or program methods later on, I want to be able to refer to this video as kind of the introduction to it. So there'll be a few terms I'll use in future videos from here. And I just kind of want to break it down real as simple as I can before we kind of continue. So one sec, I'm going to close mine to a smaller screen and we're going to get cracking now. So we're going to start with the most overwhelming part, which funnily enough, if you do any course or get any book or kind of look into muscle fibers at all, this is kind of marketed as a really need to know thing. And in all my years of coaching, I have not explained this to one person, even though there was a huge emphasis on it in the exams. But that's a different point anyway. I'm going to touch on it just to touch base, seeing as we're going to go through the most traditional way of talking about muscle fibers, and I suppose this is the first thing that's always talked about, so let's just crack into it. So all skeletal muscle is composed of fibers that have different characteristics. So we're going to look left to right, and I'm going to start with the one that you probably haven't heard of, the epimysium. So the epimysium is a tissue that is surrounding the skeletal muscle. Within that is the perimysium, which is just a sheath of connective tissue that groups fibers into little bundles, and those bundles are called fascicles. Now, the fascicles, within those you'll find the endonesium. So one sec, let me touch the screen. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see the endonesium. So they are little bundles within the fascicles. And endonesium is basically a connective tissue that ensheaths blood capillary, motor neurons, which are just nerves, and these are the muscle cells. So within this, then there is the sarcolemma, and the sarcolemma is just a cell membrane which acts as a barrier for your myofibril, which is the very last one. And the myofibril is made up of sarcomere, and the sarcomere are just functional units of a muscle, and that is basically it. In a nutshell, really quickly ran over. I don't think there's much more of a need to jump into things like that. I'm going to just move on now to the more simple stuff and easy to comprehend stuff. So as we move on, we're going to look at slow twitch versus fast twitch. So slow twitch. Your slow twitch muscles develop force and relaxes slowly, so has a long twitch time. Your fast twitch develops force and relaxes rapidly, has a short twitch time. They're the basic differences. These can be categorized into three types: type 1, type 2A, and type 2X. So categorizing these types. Looking at type 1 first, this is your typical long distance athlete. So they have more red fibers. There is low fatigability within these. High level of aerobic enzyme activity, high level capillary density, high level of mitochondria density, and low myosin ATPase. So this is your typical 10-kilometer runner, someone who can hold a fairly slow pace for a while. Let's see, if you think of any athletes, be it on your team or be it maybe, professional athletes in explosive sports wouldn't really be this kind of type, but one exaggerated version is a boxer who starts real slow but can go a long distance, or a grappler or jiu-jitsu who isn't as powerful and explosive but they last as many rounds as they need to. They have low fatigability. That's because they're not producing these rapid amounts of force. So again, a 10-kilometer runner, a marathon runner, they're your real typical type 1 categories. Then we're going to look into just type 2A. This is your middle distance event, so it's a bit of a hybrid of both, and they possess both aerobic and anaerobic capacities. So they have a high myosin ATPase activity, more potential for lean muscle. Now that's more potential than your type 1 for lean muscle. So a good indication of this is a 1 mile run, a 1600 meter run. It's a high intensity endurance event, and this is where these kind of people will, I suppose, flower. Your type 1 will have a slower time than usual at this. Your type 2A might have a very fast 800 meters or very fast 400 meters, but they won't be able to sustain that power as easily. This is someone who can pick up a pace. They're quite fast. They're not explosively fast. They're not like you wouldn't look at them and say, Jesus, they are the fastest person on the team. They might be in the top 4 or 5 or top 3 to 5, but they can hold a pace for a while, or they can repeat that power output. So this is your type 2A. Then onto the type 2X, this is your short distance or time events. So this is your 100-meter sprinter, your 40-yard dash, your Usain Bolts and the likes. These guys have more white fibres, whereas the type 2A have a mixture, kind of even amount of red and white fibres. These guys have more white fibres. It's activated when force demanded of muscle is high. So again, you're taking off those first 6 seconds of a sprint where you're going at absolute max. That's when it's activated. They have a high fatigability. So what that means is, unlike your type 1, if you're going to go at your max capacity, you're going to see a big drop in power production because you can't hold on to that forever. You can't hold on to that for that long. So they have a very high power production, which is used infrequently. So this energy system is used infrequently, and often it's trained incorrectly as well. So you'd see people doing maybe 7 sets of 100 meters with a 30-second break, and because they're sprinting or trying to sprint, they claim they're training their type 2X or their anaerobic system, but they're not really. I mean, you're never really fully recovering to produce that amount of power again, and the main goal is that you are coming into it fully recovered and you're producing that huge power output that you did in the first run. So an event that suits this is your Olympic weightlifter or your power lifter, so someone going for their 1 rep max who's very powerful, or your 40-yard dash. These athletes usually kind of thrive at these things. So just looking at characteristics, it's just a small table from left to right. We've got 1, 2A and 2X. So contraction time, you can see a type 1 has quite a slow contraction time. Type 2A, it's fast, but type 2X, it's very fast. So it's very important to know the difference between type 2A and type 2X. There is a huge difference between someone who's fast and someone who's very fast. We go down the line then: oxidative capacity, diameter, resistance to fatigue, ability to generate force, and you can go across the line and see exactly where that is, whether it's small, moderate, very high, or whether it's small, medium, or large. So if you look at yourself and you say, okay, my contraction time for myself, I'll do it for me, is it slow, fast, or very fast? It's fast. It's not very fast. Oxidative capacity, high, high, low. I would say mine is quite high. Distance events I do quite well at. So again, I'd say high on that. Diameter, small, medium, large. It's kind of hard to know without cutting myself open. Resistance to fatigue. My resistance to fatigue is moderate to high. I would say it's on the higher end, but I don't think it is. I think I get fatigued, but I'm stubborn enough to keep going, so I'd probably say moderate. And my ability to generate force, is it small, moderate, or very high? It's high. It's not overwhelmingly high, so I'm probably sitting in the type 2A category there. Considerations. So whether you're a coach or whether you're training, it's good to look at someone's training history, and it's usually a good indicator of fiber types and will influence each individual. So again, going back to that SAID principle, specific activity of imposed demand. Do you know, if you're someone who's been training marathon running for 10 years, even though your genetic makeup isn't perfect for that, that will kind of dictate the fiber types that you have trained the most, and it will dictate how you have been training and how your body looks as a result of that training, etc. So it's important to know someone's training history. Do you know, if someone comes into you and their main history was the long jump in athletics or the 100-meter sprint, and they did quite okay at that, you can say, right, I've probably got a type 2A, type 2X on my hands. Someone comes in and they've been running 5Ks, 10Ks, 20Ks, or they've been doing triathlons, you'd be thinking the opposite end then. I've got a type 1 on my hands. It's good to know about yourself as well. A wide array of fiber types present challenges with selective programming. So it's important to understand what you need, what the goal is, what fiber types need to be trained to get that goal, what fiber type you are predominantly. And I would advise, if you're someone who's slow, work on speed. If you're someone who's quite fast, I would say work on your aerobic work. you will naturally have a tendency to be better or have a capacity to be better in one area. I find working in the opposite area for a lot of people, especially in the off season, is a good idea, and it will help the area you are good in as well. So if you're a type 1 and you're good at 5Ks, by improving your 100 meter and 200 meter times, that will improve your 5Ks. If you are someone who is massively explosive, having a bigger aerobic base will allow you to recover between runs quicker. So they do feed into each other. So having an understanding of these types will allow you to understand your body and improve understanding why you get some results and lack others, which is important. So it's important for me or you to know, okay, this takes a bit more time for me to get to. I might not ever get to a 3-minute kilometer, or I might never get to a 13-second 100-meter sprint or 14-second 100-meter sprint. So it's important to say, okay, well, what can I get to, and can I make that repeatable for myself? So it's important to, I suppose, face facts and understand what's possible for you and what's not. So if you're a type 1, a slow twitch, it's quite hard to develop your type 2X, unfortunately. It's not impossible, it's just harder to develop. If you're a natural type 2X, a fast twitch, there is a huge capacity for you to develop your type 1. So energy systems will be the next step. So it's important to understand how to program for your energy systems, which we will go over next. I hope to get that video up in the coming weeks. And we'll be looking into your phosphagen ATP-PC, which is your primary anaerobic system, your glycolytic system, which is your anaerobic system, and then your oxidative system, which is your aerobic system. So again, these types will all come back around as I define these, give you examples of how to train them and things like that. So we will look into all that. This is just quick intro 101. I hope it's been somewhat helpful. If not, at least it introduces you to terminology that will be useful down the line. So yeah, next step is moving on.